Hello, marketers. This is the Funnel Lab. Welcome to Funnel Lab Fridays. I am your co-host, joined today by our typical host, Eric. I'm Doug. I run marketing here at CaliberMind. Joining me today are our fellow guest panels. We've had Misha, we've had Nick on quite a bit. They're both from our amazing professional services organization. Of course, my co-host, Eric Westerkamp, CaliberMind CEO. Today, we're going to have a lively discussion and share our predictions for B2B marketing in 2025. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, panelists. So it's prediction times, folks. The end of the calendar year is here. Gosh, it snuck up on us. And that has us thinking about trends of 2024 and how they're going to show up in 2025. We're going to be covering 5 predictions today. We're going to be talking about dedicated AI agents. We're going to be talking about the transition away from traditional marketing automation platforms. We'll talk a bit about the impact of enterprise-wide AI on your data. We're going to talk about how RevOps is going to be in charge of future-proofing your RevTech stacks, your MarTech stacks, and we're going to talk about how media mix modeling will not replace multi-touch attribution, despite all the noise. So Eric, welcome back. Nick, Misha, thanks for being here with us. Eric, I'm going to have you kick us off. Talk to us about dedicated AI agents. What is this, and why are you predicting this to be impactful in 2025?
Sure. So I may be leaning pretty far into the future, where it may be 2025. We'll start to see this sort of trend begin. But for those who don't know, an AI agent is something that leverages a large language model with a very specific task in mind. It takes a task and it does something, then it outputs something, and you can string multiple agents together to kind of think about do one task, and this agent does another task and another task, right? And this is very quickly becoming productionized and available in different sets of tools, right? We're building something like that into CaliberMind right now. We've got other tools that we leverage, right? So when you take that and you start to think through the future, it's like, where is this going? I really believe we're going to end up in a world with sort of hyper targeting for marketing. Right? We think about it now. We think about ABM. It's like, I'm going to target this company and I'm going to try to get content in front of them. Then I'm going to try to pick out roles. But imagine a world where AI agents build and craft content on the fly, specifically depending on the buyer journey of an individual in the context of their company and what they're looking for, to make sure that it's crafting things that are relevant to that person and what they're looking for at that point in time, right? Kind of, you take this to the extreme. You can imagine an AI agent that's, hey, I need, I'm looking for a PDF document that tells me how to do X, Y, or Z. Well, that document gets created on the fly by the AI agent, writing it for them, picking out and looking at information it knows about the person, who they are, their title, their role, what they've looked at before, information, and then it crafts it and it gives it to them on the fly, right? Or imagine it building out, we're seeing this with Notebook LM from Google. On the fly, it builds a PDF, then it feeds it into Notebook LM, and it hands them a podcast. So here it is. I'm looking to understand your product better. Here's the things that I care about. Boom, here's a podcast of a couple of people discussing those issues in front of you. And you take it even further, and you can even interact with them and ask them questions and things like that. So you get to this point where you've got this sort of height, like, my perfect buyer journey looks like this, and these AI agents are used to kind of craft that buyer journey for you on the fly, right? By using all this information, this data.
So you expressed this yesterday when we were sort of working through what we wanted to boil what was a pretty big list of predictions down to, Eric. And you sort of talked about it as, imagine a dedicated AI agent just for you. Yep. That knows really everything about you and is going to make sure that your journey is going to be as good as it possibly can be. And I thought that was a really good way of capturing it. And I'm going to mention, by the way, you made this prediction, Eric. There's already a software package out there for this. There's an organization called PathMonk. Now, they don't have the active AI agents, more passive, but that's the idea. So, It's a prediction, frankly, grounded in the reality of what's happening currently. Misha, Nick, have you guys run into this stuff at the client level at this point? In other words, are you starting to see this? Nick, I know you have a favorite tool you've been shopping around internally that is sort of in that AI agent side of things. What are you guys seeing on this front? Are you with Eric, or you feel like he's way too out ahead of his skis? I'm sorry, his snowboard.
Kind of a sidebar. Have you guys heard about that? The meme coin created by AI agents?
No.
They basically let a group of AI agents chat in a chat room, unfiltered. And one of them decided to become a millionaire and launched a meme coin called Godius Maximus. And every 5 minutes, it'll send out a tweet on X, and it actually collects donations. And so there's the first AI agent millionaire right now, as of a few days ago. So, Eric, your prediction sounds far off, but maybe it's closer than we think. Almost every tool in our RevOps stack has some type of AI assistant now, whether we're using Google and Gemini's helping write code.
Yeah.
We use Fireflies to transcribe meetings, to CaliberMind to summarize.
Ask Cal.
So
Yeah.
It's a pretty exciting time, but it's going to be an exercise in kind of sifting through the noise and what's garbage and what has access to the right data, what's hallucinating. So there's going to be this quality control issue as well. So
Okay.
we're not, dumping our money in meme coins that are fake.
I already just gave $100, so I thank you for letting me know that. So, all right, so I think this was maybe the safest prediction, right? Because we can all throw all these examples of how this is happening. I want to go to a different one, Nick. I'm going to start with you. This really was yours in many ways, and you talked about the role of RevOps changing. And we had a pretty big list of ways that we thought RevOps would evolve. But one of the things we focused on was the fact that RevOps is going to be in charge in 2025 of future-proofing their stacks. Eric, you talked about this as well. So what does that mean? What does it mean to future-proof your stack? Anybody can weigh in, by the way, at any point in time on any of these predictions. But what does this mean? Eric, I wouldn't mind hearing from you as well. So Nick, what do you got?
Yeah, I think last year, especially with and even coming out of COVID, there was this pressure to consolidate the stack. I'm on a lot of sales demos, and there was always, the theme of, hey, our CFO wants us to consolidate tools. How can CaliberMind help, et cetera? Now we're seeing budgets actually open up a little bit because there's this fear that, you're going to be left behind by your competition. So there's this interesting dynamic going where RevOps still has to be savvy about consolidating their tools, but they need to pick tools in their stack that are going to be, next gen and to stay ahead of their curve. So, I feel like some of the legacy tools, even Marketo folks are starting to say, well, maybe there's some more savvy tools out there that are staying more up on the market. So very interesting shift, I'd say, but I think important.
I got the impression here, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Nick, but I got the impression here that the definition of future proofing is likely to shift a little bit. But the idea I got was, are you seeing applications in your stack that are likely to be replaced by AI or AI enabled? That was one thing I felt like we were picking up on quite a bit. And the other was really how our vendors are using data was another theme. Like, how are they helping you sort of organize your data? We also talked about we were going to start moving away from this idea of vendors with dedicated CDPs. So Eric, I wouldn't mind sort of this is also your baby as well. And then Misha, I want to comment from you, but what do you think this means when they future-proof? And then Misha, I want to hear from you what you think this means as well.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things going on. I think we're moving, hopefully we're moving out of this realm of I gotta consolidate, I gotta bring the tools down because I have all these tools that are doing things, into a moment where it's like, okay, I now need to figure out what is the right mix of tools to achieve whatever our organizational goals are, right? So as a marketing organization, we have certain goals. What are the tools that are going to get us there? And okay, now as a RevOps leader, I also have this sort of added complexity of the tool marketplace is now shifting dramatically under our feet. There's a lot of AI being added to these tools. But the reality is that you have to really dig in and be like, is this AI real? Is it good? Is it doing anything meaningful for me? Is the vendor that I'm investing in a company that is going to be able to take that AI and continue to innovate and use it? Or is it just going to become a commodity sometime here in the future, right? And so the RevOps leader now is picking the next generation of tools, because the tool stack that we're going to see in 5 years is not going to look like it is today, right? I go back to my previous prediction. It's going to be driven and run by agents. So what are the tools that the agents are going to need to use to help do things, right? And then what tools are you going to pick? And the RevOps leader is stuck in the middle of figuring all this out for these organizations. And it's going to be tough, right? They're going to have to be honest, they're going to have to start to familiarize themselves with what's going on, LLMs, how they work, these types of things, these capabilities, just so they can even evaluate the quality of the tools coming at them.
Yeah, it feels like, I mean, the buzzword last year, Misha, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to go to you next, but it was just so easy before, right? And again, you guys are RevOps folks, so I'm not going to oversimplify what you do, but it was cut, consolidate, right? We don't have budget, so parse the things down that we really don't need. From a vendor standpoint, it was called the Sassacre. That's changing. That's evolving pretty quickly. So Misha, I'm going to go back to you and sort of tell us what you're experiencing here. What do you think is going to happen?
I guess my comment has to do with both of these predictions. I'm really curious about the skill set, like how this is going to apply to the RevOps skill set. An average marketer 15 years ago is a fairly creative role. You look at an average marketer today, and you probably you're closer to data, much closer to data. Certainly for analysts and RevOps. Now with LLMs and AI in the mix, I can envision there being, I made a comment the other day that I'm curious, how that's going to affect the need for, let's say, SQL knowledge. And while my initial response is, now it's all LLM, so maybe you don't need to know it as much. But in reality, the deeper you get into this, you realize that the underlying data is very critical. So Nick made a really wise comment at the time, saying that, well, actually, there might be an even deeper need for data understanding, because you're putting a lot more of your trust and perhaps a lot more of your marketing motion itself into these agents, right? And into some of these new systems that will undoubtedly be.
Yeah, super interesting comment. I don't think future proofing only means AI. It means, do you have a scalable data infrastructure? Does your technology serve the right users and align with their skills? And then the RevOps charter is expanding too, to own more analytics functions. And I'm seeing, just talking to our customers, so it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, precisely. And I think just as these tools are really cross-functional, I mean, the RevOps function is kind of a perfect team to adopt it, right? Because they really do work. They sit somewhere between, in many larger organizations, between a marketing team, some sort of analytics or a data science team, and perhaps even, the engineering team or IT team that might own the technologies themselves. So I think they'll become real owners of some of these technologies that we're seeing sprout.
Yeah.
Well, we'll know this has happened when we start seeing KPIs associated with future proofing. They may not be called future proofing, right? But I think we're going to know pretty quickly. And I have to say, of all the predictions, this is the one that was really dead on for me because of that role of RevOps. And then one of us expressed this yesterday is 2 years ago, we thought everybody would have to learn SQL, right? And it's interesting. It's like, I still feel like that's a really good point, meaning you're going to have to understand how to query data, even in the world of AI. So we're going to move on. We're going to go to the next prediction, folks. This is one of my favorites because it just drives me absolutely bonkers. I will tell you, I've been around MarTech for a really, really long time, and this thing pops up every 5 years, and it drives me nuts. Okay, so here it is. Here's our prediction. We're laying it down again, everybody. Media mix modeling will not replace marketing attribution, despite all the noise. I'm going to put this back out to Misha and Nick, and before I put it back to you guys, I just will make the comment that I recently met with just this brilliant data scientist who developed an application for B2C organizations to do media mix modeling, and the complexity of the code and the data in the background is mind-bending, and that's for B2C. So I feel passionately about this. I love the idea. I just think it's really hard to pull off. So Nick, you want to kick us off here? Do you agree, or do you feel like maybe I need to get off my high horse on this one?
Yeah, so I mean, B2B has lagged, 10 years behind B2C technology historically. And even attribution is something that B2B is just now catching up to. If you look at attribution tools for B2B 5 years ago, they're radically different. So similar to MMM, it's been around since, I don't know, the 60s probably. And in B2C, but now we're trying to catch up and say, how do we apply this? What's the size of our market? Where should we spend our next dollar? So while I think it's a worthwhile goal to chase, how can I algorithmically, dedicate dollars to the right mix? I think that, attribution and the infrastructure with attribution will continue to be mission critical. And I'd argue that, without that infrastructure, you can't even attempt an inkling of MMM. You know, the challenge of even implementing attribution we're seeing at these large enterprises where they have dirty data, broken processes, you know, years of tech debt. That in itself takes a lot of effort to clean up and make the data useful. And only then can you start to think about more advanced machine learning problems like MMM. So I think it's an interesting trend. I think, you know, we're still talking 5 years out before it's really tangible and we can make some in B2B, you know, meaningful budget adjustments due to it.
What do you think, Misha?
And I think from working with customers day to day, there's a lot of weight that goes into explainability in analytics in general. And I think MMM, while incredibly powerful, and will continue to be, I think, an entity that companies will try to chase as you know, something that will drive their actions. I think attribution still has room because particularly as you go into, you know, to the C-suite, you want to understand what worked this last quarter. Why did it work the way it did? I feel like attribution does a much better job doing this. So I don't think it's a question of one will take over the other. I think there's real value in both. And I
That
think,
is way too pragmatic. Sorry, Misha, way too pragmatic today, my friend. But
I wouldn't write it off. And I'll be honest, like as an organization, we'll take a look at it. Can we do anything with this? And we have access to a lot of data, and we have customers that'll be super interested that have a ton of data, and we'll see if it works and if you can get meaningful results out of it. I'm not 100% sure you can, because B2B buying motions are longer, they're noisier, they have a lot more channels involved. It's just a lot more complex data, and the data is less tightly bound time-wise. Then, you know, marketing mix modeling works great for an e-commerce site, you know, or a B2C motion or something like that, where, you know, where the transaction size is X and I'm dealing in the millions of transactions, right? When you're dealing in deals that may be worth $1 million, you know, that span a year and a half for an organization, that have 25 different people, and then in the middle you get 2 sales reps. What does the marketing mix modeling do on that data, right? But I won't write it off. We'll go test it. My guess though is that it'll evolve, and to be some extent, I go back to my prediction on agents. Do you need it? Like, what's the goal of marketing mix modeling? Make decisions make really good decisions on how to move money around on ads and things like that to maximize an output. But what if your system is so close to the buyer and monitoring this process, it's making the decisions for you, and you're optimizing on that? Do you even need marketing mix modeling at that point? Or has it kind of shifted into this agent framework, which is making these buying decisions on the fly for you?
I think what you're saying is spot on. But as a prediction for 2025, and I can only see what, you know, we're working with a lot of enterprise customers. Yeah. The number of customers that have said, "Oh no, I want an ML-driven attribution model." It's kind of, you know, maybe a close attempt to MMM today because it's chain, right? It looks at sequence of events, so it does something very similar, and it's rolled out. And 2 weeks later, the conversation. I mean, I've seen this so many times. We love this. This is amazing. And then 2 weeks later, present to the CMO, and the CMO is like, "Well, but can you explain to me how the data works?" And you're like, "Well, it's, you know, it's an ML model. It's much harder to unpack." Okay, let's go back to something like, can I see this in an even weighted way as well?
Yeah.
And that's where my comment came from. That it's not an either or. It's a matter. There's something about explainability there as well that I think for the coming year will still be useful. Now, perhaps in 5 years' time, I imagine AI will be adopted even more. Maybe it'll look vastly different.
So the way and I wish I could remember his name, brilliant guy, had a couple Manhattans with him, so that's probably why I don't remember his name. Josh, his name was Josh. I got the first name, but the way that he expressed it was time to purchase and intent to purchase. And with B2C, those are very narrow windows of predictability. And I, was quizzing him about this, and I'm like, well, why can't we, okay, so what if those things are broader? And he's like, he brought up something that Eric knows well, and actually, frankly, you guys know well, that's happening in the 4 walls of CaliberMind, which was we were crushing it with LinkedIn. You guys remember this? Crushing it with LinkedIn for the ABX motion. And then Microsoft pushed an update to the algorithm. And it changed our top of funnel dramatically for 2 or 3 months until we could figure out how to right size that. How does a model adjust to that? And by the way, it's happening across B2B all the time. And so really that's where my skepticism comes from. It's, and I agree with Eric. It's like short, fast transactions, that makes sense. But when you're talking about the complexity and diversity of channels and the extended sales cycles, especially when you're doing $100,000 or $200,000 deals, I don't know how media mix modeling is going to help you. Now, I think it's going to be applied to the top of your funnel, right? To say, hey, this is how you can optimize the top of your funnel. But the buyer journey, folks, is not going to happen. All right, good. Glad we covered this. This is my pet peeve. So thanks for entertaining my ranting on this front. Eric, I'm going to go back over to you on this one. So I love this one because I think marketing automation platforms are critical, but I love what you're saying here. So Eric, you're saying that you think marketing automation platforms are going to start to go away. Explain this one to us.
I do. So, and I think we're already seeing it. You ask the questions like, what is the purpose of the marketing automation platform in a traditional format? And I'm thinking the Marketos, the Eloquas, the Pardots, HubSpot a little bit, but HubSpot's trying to be a CRM and they're trying to be 12 different things. And to some extent, they're succeeding with that, right? But when you look at that, they're essentially form-based landing pages and outbound email. So people use them for. And so then when I look at how marketing motions are changing, how we've already had to move, like, why did outreach and Apollo.ai and these outbound email, why did they become so popular? Well, it's because marketing automation platforms were spamming everybody, and we needed a motion that actually would not be considered spam. And so you went to the sales reps doing automated sequences at the individual level that were tailored on outreach and these things. You are starting to see some of the traffic move away. I think you're going to start to see a continuation of that, where things like an outbound email, it's just an outbound email endpoint tool. It's becoming part of these other types of platforms, like a no-code platform or these things, where I can just do those things. And so what you're going to start to see is what's going to become more important is a centralized marketing data warehouse. Here's all my information. Something that's deciding on the types of things that I need to do, some outbound marketing, some individual things, I need to, whatever it is, making those decisions. And then it's just going to use an appropriate tool to send that information out. It could be a marketing automation platform, but at that point in time, it's just a commodity, right? And maybe a little bit, kind of pushing the envelope to say that these things are going to become commodities, but they're just going to become a commodity. And so this central data warehouse, plus the tools that are understanding it, that are sending out the data and figuring out what to do, that's going to be the actual automation platform. These things just become delivery mechanisms, right? And when it's just a delivery mechanism, I can use anything, right? I could use Marketo, I could use Outreach, I could use Apollo, I could use a Google agent that just does emails for me. Like, there's a ton of ways to get that stuff done.
And I think part of
those things, marketers had shift away from those things as sort of the central concept of a tool of, like, sort of the center of gravity for those organizations.
Yeah, and Eric, the thing I think is squaring this prediction for me is that email deliverability and the email channel writ large for organizations, we've seen this really, it used to be a critical part. It used to be a critical part of most marketing mixes, and that's going away for all sorts of reasons that I think any marketer in here would tell you is probably going to accelerate this process. So, okay, that was less controversial than I thought. Misha, Nick, you guys on board with this idea, or do you think your boss?
I have some agree with some points and disagree with some points. For 2025, I'm seeing this rise of new trendy vendors that are, to Eric's point, based on the warehouse. These are composable marketing automation solutions that, instead of bringing your own database, most savvy companies have their own first-party data set. So why would you want to move data back into Marketo to segment over there when you can take Iterable or Inflection.io or some of these new tools that also have all the product and PLG data in there? And there's this kind of similar to what we saw with the attribution, where it's moving out of the CRM. I think there's a lot of merit to moving it out of marketing automation centric data warehouse into your own Google, Amazon, etc. So I am seeing this kind of headless, or you could call it, and then maybe it will eventually be replaced by agents. But I do think, and maybe I'm a little biased because I come from marketing ops. I think you'll still need an operator and some tool, but I don't think the tools that were used for the past 10 years are going to be used for the next 10 years.
So you're just confirming what I'm saying.
I'm confirming, but I think it's going to be a slower change. And I think there's a step in between. Not just they go away, it's they evolve to different set of vendors that are on the warehouse first. And then we're say, wait, hey, we don't need them. Let's just do agents. That's
I'm very, very curious how, because the second prediction and this one, right, about the consolidation, and these are almost going in opposite ways. Because if you're saying the big elephant in the room is going to be no longer, and it's going to be taken on by these perhaps other agents or perhaps even smaller companies that do segmentation very well on top of your data warehouse, and then maybe be connected to some, right? That kind of goes away. It conflicts a little bit with this idea of no, more and more things are going to be consolidated, because what you're saying
there has to be, to your point, Misha, around like marketers still fear the black box and they don't trust it. There has to be some stepping stones where maybe the AI agents are building your segments for you, but you still have to approve them, and you still want to see who's in the segments and understand how they got there. And then you hit send and you launch the campaign.
Well, I think that brings a good point, was that if you don't have an underlying analytics framework behind all of this, you won't know if this stuff is working at the end of the day, right? I think that's kind of the point, is like, if you have an underlying analytics framework that's monitoring and measuring how well things are working for you, then you can introduce these things and you can say, oh, is it working or is it not working for me, right? Is it things getting better or not? As opposed to just letting them out in the wild and hoping that you get better results. Yeah.
All right, folks, I'm going to take us to the final prediction. The undercurrent of everything we talked about is data. So we got to talk about data. And this was one I put out there yesterday. Not a lot of controversy, so we're going to unpack it quickly. But here's my prediction. And it is that enterprise-wide AI, so think about Google Gemini or IBM Watson, pick your poison. It's starting to get implemented in large organizations. This is going to drive a data hygiene and structure transformation. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be equivalent in scale to the ongoing digital transformation of early 2000s. I feel like Accenture, who just laid off a bunch of people, are going to hire them again. I think this is that big a transition. Gentlemen, do you care to expand? What are we talking about here? Because we deal with this every single day with people's data, right? If it's not well structured, if it's sitting in silos, it's really hard to do good attribution. So thoughts in here, and should I be applying for a job at Accenture? Are we in vigorous agreement, gentlemen, on this one?
Yeah, I'm trying to process that. So no, you shouldn't apply for a job at Accenture. Is data? What I'll say is that if our prediction that the marketing data warehouse becomes the center of gravity now for marketing organizations, and then that marketing data warehouse is what's being leveraged by all of these tools, whether it's near term or longer term agents and stuff like that, to figure out what to do, and your analytics platform is doing that, then yes, data hygiene is going to become critical, right? I am not 100% convinced it's going to be as hard as you're making it out to be, because I think that even we are starting to figure out at scale how to do this for large organizations, how to make this happen at scale, and that will get better, right? But I could be wrong. I think, will they need that single source of really good data and information? Yes. And I think that piece of information is going to become a critical asset for most organizations. I think that marketing data set is also going to become significantly more important and operational for companies. Right now, it tends to sit with marketing, but we're already seeing lots of other business units and our customers, they need access to that data. And as the CRM information, which is so messy, doesn't get fixed, people are going to start to look to that data set as being like, this is where I go get the real information I need to kind of run parts of my business. It has my customers in it. It has my prospects in it. It has an activity timeline with all the information I need to know about what we've done about it, right? It has AI models that are running inside of it, that are extracting and doing predictions and information around it, that becomes critical. And then building the data pipelines that can take all that messy data and turn it into clean data. That is going to be a big effort for a lot of organizations. As big as the whole digital transformation, yeah, I don't know.
I guess it depends on what you want your agent to do. Is this an agent that's, you could ask about your HR policies? Okay, well then it's going to need access to your intranet, and all that data needs to be organized and fed in. Or is it, you know, a marketing agent that's helping you segment your database? Well, that's a totally different data set. So it's going to be driven by prediction one, I guess. What agents are you trying to build for your company? And then that's going to, well, how bad is my data in that area that agent needs? You know, so there could be some pretty interesting transformations.
And in terms of the data transformation itself, I mean, that's already been happening. I'm sure everyone here would be in agreement that first-party data is a true, you know, company differentiator nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's been a sentiment in the market that's growing for sure. I think what is being adopted by these kind of enterprise-wide AI tools is that you're going to see data being delivered to places in ways that it previously hasn't. You know, we're doing a lot of work on LLM ourselves, and how do we deliver really complex buyer journeys in a methodology that'll be really easy for a sales rep to grasp what my next action should be, you know, in 15 seconds. It's a non-trivial proposition, but I think one that's certainly growing.
Okay, well, folks, I gotta take us out here. Thank you for all the brilliant wisdom and expertise. I was trying to calculate how many years in MarTech we have sitting in front of these cameras today. I think Westerkamp was 50 years. I was 20. Misha, you guys collectively with Nick, I tease Eric, we're the same age.
It's only because my experience has a like, you know, squared on it right there.
Okay, so hey, let's stay on the data privacy theme. Next week, we're going to be joined by a data privacy attorney to sort of help us understand. We talk about data all the time because guess what, folks? Unless your data is in a good spot, it's not going to be helpful to you. But also, we're running into data privacy issues. We're running into lots of things that are going to prevent enterprises from being able to help their customers and themselves. Gentlemen, thank you for the live discussion. We have to do this again next year, 2026 predictions. We'll see who was right. We'll see who was wrong. Thanks for joining us today, everybody.
Good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.